everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamie, and today we are going to be going over all of the books that I read in the first month of the year, 2026, January. Okay, I don't know what that was. Okay, you might be asking yourself, what happened to the reading wrap-up video of November and or December? And I don't have an answer for you. I read a ton of books in both November and December, and I really wanted to make a wrap-up video, but I just kept running into technical difficulties. I couldn't get things to work. It was hard to find a time to sit down and do it, to actually write my notes out. I just wasn't happy with what I was producing. So I reminded myself that no one's forcing me to make videos. I'm doing this for fun, and if it's too stressful, I'm just not going to do it. So we're skipping over November and December. I'm trying this new thing where I actually journal my book thoughts when I have them, like right after I read the book, instead of trying to remember my vague feelings of books a month after I've read them when I make my notes for the video. So we'll see how that is. I was greatly inspired by all of the bullet journal, book journaling, book tracker videos that I've been seeing. I find them so aesthetically pleasing, so interesting. And I've wanted to do that myself, but I've attempted bullet journaling before and it's just not for me. I am not an artistic person. I can't remember to do things daily. I can't remember to like color things in the correct color. It's hard for me. I'm just not that kind of planner bullet journaling person. So we're going to try this method of just literally writing out my thoughts and feelings and see how that goes. The very first book that I read in the very first month of 2026 was The House on the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. And I say that, okay, first and foremost, if you are my friend, you know which friend I'm talking about, please turn away. This is one of my friend's favorite books, and I don't have horrible things to say, but I don't necessarily have nice things to say about it. So turn away now. I read this for book club. If it wasn't for book club, I would never have picked up this book. For two reasons. First, cozy fantasies, not really my thing. When it's only known for how cozy it is, it's never going to be for me. There's got to be something else about the book that draws me to it. I'm never going to read a book just because I think it's cozy. I don't know. I'm not a cozy person. But we will talk later about some two other books that I would consider cozy that I much more enjoyed. The other reason I would never have picked up this book is because of the controversy that comes with TJ Klune. This book is an urban fantasy specifically about these magical orphanages. That's all they're called, orphanages, where children who are magical creatures or fairies. So sorry, I just had to evict my cat from the room because Tito's looking at it like this. I had to evict my cat from the room because he likes to try and knock over cameras, and I have this set up so precariously that a little nudge will send it tumbling. These orphanages hold magical kids that are taken from their families. I don't know if it's ever actually explained if they are orphans or if they are just placed here because the magical adults are not allowed. Tito as well. The magical adults are not allowed to care for their own children. The controversy is that this is a feel-good, magical fantasy, cozy fantasy book with a very happy ending. But TJ Klune mentioned in an interview that he was inspired by the 60s scoop. Now, I am not the expert on history, especially Indigenous history. I do know that the 60s scoop was the general name for a centuries-long practice. I don't know exactly why it's called the 60s scoop. I think in the 60s there was a resurgence of this practice, but the practice is taking Indigenous children away from their families and putting them in residential schools in order to strip them of their Indigenous culture and try to forcefully assimilate them into white American culture. There was a lot of abuse. There was a lot of murder. I think in my lifetime, I think it was like within the last decade, there was one residential school in Canada where they excavated and found the burial of dozens of children who just, their deaths were never reported. these people just went missing, and it was on the grounds of this residential school. So it is a horrific thing. It is quite literally a cultural genocide. It was white Americans, white North Americans, trying to rip indigenous families apart and force them to no longer be indigenous. And if they didn't, they died. So it's kind of, weird that this, white guy said he was inspired by the 60s scoop to write a cozy fantasy where everyone survives and lives a happy long life, especially since it's such a vague idea of prejudice that he literally didn't have to say that. The whole point of this book is that magical creatures, magical people, are heavily segregated from non-magical people. Our main character, Linus, works for the department in charge of magical youth called Dykemy, and he's basically a social worker. He goes to these orphanages to make sure that everything's good. Nobody's being abused, nobody's doing bad things, but a lot of things slip through the cracks. Abuse still happens, prejudice still happens, basically racism still happens against these magical beings. Everyone is kind of scared of these magical beings because they're powerful. I did not enjoy it. I read it on a road trip to and from Indianapolis. I think the only reason I finished it was because I was trapped in a car and too lazy to change the book to change it to music or anything. My fiance had fallen asleep, and when we got back in the car after like a road stop, he asked, "Has anything happened in the book?" And I forgot that he had fallen asleep. So I was legitimately just like, "No, nothing has fucking happened in this book." I mean, we've talked about a lot of things, but it's the same conversation. And then I remembered he was asking that because he had fallen asleep and was asking if he had missed anything. And he didn't, because nothing fucking happened. Okay. Sorry. The humor that is in this book is not my kind of humor. The character Lucy got on my nerves very quickly. The novelty of him being like a centuries old demon spawn in the body of a 6-year-old just got very annoying very quickly. It's not my kind of humor. For other people, it's their kind of humor. Totally understand. But the fact that they kept harping on this, I was like, oh my god, can we move the fuck on? It got very annoying after like the third or fourth time any of the characters just legitimately turned to camera and monologued about how prejudice is bad. That's pretty much 90% of this book. And then on top of that, I guess the thesis is that yes, there are some bad apples, but if you just talk to them, prejudice can be erased because you find out that these are just kids and there's nothing scary about them. I don't know. I feel like prejudice and racism is a bit more systemic than that. But, it's a cozy fantasy. We're not allowed to actually have stakes. We're not allowed to actually have action on page. That was another thing that pissed me off. An example later in the book, Lucy, again, the mother, he is at like a record store, and Linus is talking to one of the owners of the record store, and another coworker takes Lucy to the back room to show him more records. And then Linus hears a thud and a scream, and he like runs to the back room to find the coworker like sprawled out on the floor, like obviously had been hit against the wall, and Lucy's just like flipping through the records. And when Linus says what happened, Lucy goes, "Oh yeah, he tried to attack me, but it's okay because I like pushed him off or used my sonic blast or whatever the fuck he did. I don't know. He was safe. He was fine. He dealt with the attack himself." But it wasn't on page. Why wasn't it on page? Why did the author make that that's one of my biggest pet peeves, when like something happens off page and then immediately people run to the person and go, "What happened?" and they explain what happened. Just make it an on page moment. Unless it truly needs to be something off page, as in like the POV character needs to doubt what happened because they didn't see it. I can understand that, but that's not what this is. I give it a 3-star because when it comes to characterization, when it comes to pacing, when it comes to the actual prose, it was fine. Solid book. When it comes to conflict, when it comes to like introspection or character growth, I didn't see any. I didn't see any that made me, really stop and consider my own ideas. I will say when I went to book club, there were a few things that went over my head that other people noticed. So them explaining it did make me go, oh, I see where you're coming from. I see where the book did that. So I will say it may have gone up to like a 3.25 after book club and after hearing other people talk about it. It was not a book I would have finished if it wasn't for book club. I know I just said I don't like cozy books, but then I read A Psalm for the Wild Built and A Prayer for the Crown Shy. I think the series is called Monk and Robot or Robot and Monk or something like that. So this is also considered a cozy fantasy. This series follows a tea monk. Their name is Sibling Dex. A tea monk's job is to listen to the people around them, listen to their struggles, and then prescribe a tea to them. If they are stressed, you provide a calming tea. If they are unable to fall asleep, you provide them a sleep that will help them fall asleep. If they are, exhausted, you prescribe them a caffeinated tea, something like that. There's a lot that goes into it, and it's more about a spiritual connection, an emotional connection with another person, and to unload your burdens on them and then receive something back that will help you. And whether that is just a 5-minute break, it's a very futuristic world, but technology got too advanced. They had all these robots that were basically personal servants of the humans. And at some point, they divided. The robots all went out into the wild. The humans created their own utopian society. It's so peaceful and utopian, where they focus specifically on how their technology and how their actions impact nature. At one point, Dex won't even walk off the path because they're scared of stepping on plants. Dex has a crisis of faith or a midlife crisis, just some sort of indecision of what to do with their life. So they go out into the wild, and in the wild, they find a robot named Moscap. And according to the original agreement between the humans and the robots, at a point in time, the robots would come back to the human civilization and ask, are you guys doing okay? Is there anything we can do to help? And that's what Moscap has been assigned to do. And so these two form a very, very beautiful friendship, and an unlikely friendship. And they just help each other learn about life and what you can do to help other people. We get existentialism, we get this philosophy on life, what one person personally needs out of life versus what the community might need. I saw this described as cozy, and I won't disagree with that. It is definitely cozy, but in my head, it's more peaceful. And maybe that's just a synonym, but to me, cozy and peaceful are slightly different. And that slight difference is the moneymaker for me, you know? When I think of cozy, I think of somebody wrapped in a cozy blanket, watching a comfort movie, eating their comfort food. They don't have to think about anything. They don't have to worry about anything. But when I think of peaceful, I think of being out. Maybe you're inside, maybe you're at a museum, maybe you're in nature, but you're contemplating. You are given things to think about, and that's the difference, I think. This book has a leg up because it has my favorite, I don't know what to call it, aesthetic, world building trope. I don't know, but my favorite thing is when technology has advanced so far, but then there's something that happens that technology bad, or technology is too great, we have to destroy it or we have to hide it, and so then the world advances without that technology. So when you find it, it's centuries old, but like nature has gained control of it, or nature has grown on top of it, or it's learned to interact with nature. So in our heads, this is magical technology because it's so advanced, but at the time of the story, it's like an ancient, dilapidated thing. I don't know how to explain it. The best examples are like Castle in the Sky, Atlantis, even like Zelda, I think. She-Ra, Princess of Power has this, Steven Universe. Those things It's my favorite aesthetic, my favorite trope. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know what it's called, but I need more of it. And A Song for the Wild Built is 100% that. And I think I actually was recommended it through a post that was like, if you like Castle in the Sky, read this book. I loved it. I thought it was gorgeous. I thought it was great. I am content with it being a duology. I think it's open ended enough that it could have a long running series, but as of right now, it is fine as a duology. What was my next thing? Oh my God. Yes, I'm going to talk about these in tandem. I read two different books this month called Whale Fall. Can you believe that? I just randomly picked up two different books called Whale Fall. So the first one, Whale Fall by Elizabeth O'Connor. This is set on a fictional Welsh island in the late 30s. So imagine you're off the coast of the UK mainland and World War II is starting to amp up and you're getting information only through news. You're not really seeing the impact of it yet. So all it is like, what is the mainland going to do about this Hitler guy? The book is detailing the life and culture of this fictional island, based specifically on the various islands off the UK mainland. We follow Manid, a young woman on the island whose greatest desire is to go to the mainland, hopefully to go to college, although it's 30s, so women going to college wasn't that common. She knows, obviously, her native tongue, Welsh Cymru, I think is the real name for it, and she's also very fluent in English. The reason she has to stay on this island is kind of twofold. It's that her family needs her. Her mother has passed, so she's taking care of her much younger sister. She also takes care of her father. So two things happen at the beginning. A whale beaches itself. This is where we get the name Whale Fall. A whale beaches itself, and we watch it slowly die and decay. And this is kind of seen as a bad omen for Manid, and she wants to leave the island. This is like her calling card of like, I need to leave. I cannot die on this island. But then also, we get some English ethnographers come to the island, and they employ Manid because she is fluent in English, so she can translate to the islanders what they want and what the islanders are saying to them. Ethnographers, if you're not familiar with that, are people who go to various countries and just study the culture there. And they are supposed to, hopefully, accurately record the various cultural differences of these countries. We get an insight into Welsh culture and the way Mened sees it and the way these English ethnographers see it, because they are willfully getting it wrong. Mened keeps fighting with them that this translation means this, you're writing it down the wrong way, or you're making them pose for a picture doing something that we would never do or the way we would never do it. And the ethnographers just brush her off and are like, well, the picture looks better. They're writing things down and recording things to match their preconceived notions of what island Welsh culture is like. And it's not correct. And Manad keeps telling them that's not correct. That's not how our island works. That's not how our culture works. But because the English are colonialists and they have no respect for other cultures, they don't care. While the island is fictitious, this is based on things that truly happened, and the author has a full section in the author's note where she goes over like historical texts of various Celtic cultures and islands that were heinously wrong, that did not capture the culture correctly. Like this happened multiple times, and it's because the English just don't care that much about Celtic culture. But it's also like, why are you an ethnographer if you're not accurately recording? It's a whole thing. Anyway, some things I loved about this. First of all, just an insight into Celtic cultures that you never really see. When people think of Celtic cultures, they think of like Ireland and Scotland, but Wales, Isle of Man, all of these smaller islands, they're also Celtic, and they also were colonized by the English, and things like that happened. This is also like a dying island. There was an illness that took out a lot of people, and then on top of that, a lot of their young men are being called to the mainland for the literal war. So like this island culture could literally die, and it's not being recorded accurately. I listened to this on audiobook. 100% you should do that, because this, I think, was the first time I've ever heard the Welsh language spoken. I don't think I've ever actually listened to it. I say that, and I know my mom's gonna call me and be like, "What do you mean? I spoke Welsh to you when you were a baby." She's always saying things like that. Like, I'll tell her I've never read King Lear, and she'll be like, "What do you mean? I read King Lear to you when you were 6 months old." Yeah, mom, I remember when you read King Lear to me. Thank you. I will say I'm not sure exactly what the whale fall comes from, because yes, there is a dying whale on the beach, but a whale fall refers specifically to a whale carcass becoming its own ecosystem in the ocean. So if there was a connection between whale fall and the dying whale on the beach, it went over my head. I'm not sure my brain connected those dots. Maybe someone smarter can understand that, but I did not. Wonderful read. I loved what it was striving to do and talk about the second whale fall by Daniel Kraus. This is a sci-fi, and this one is Cocoa Banana Puffs. Okay, this one, I listened to it on a road trip again back from Indianapolis, and it was one sitting, and we got home at like midnight, so the entire drive was dark. It was terrifying. Okay, this book, Whale Fall, follows Jay, a teenager. I think he's either 19 or 20. He's a young man. His father was a very well respected sea diver, like free diver, scuba diver, and Jay grew up basically in his father's shadow. Everyone in the area, in the San Francisco Bay Area, knows his father. Everyone who's a diver knows his father. They have legitimate stories of him saving their lives. They have, years and years of friendship with this man. But Jay knows him as a very malevolent presence, as a man who never said he was proud of him, a man who was emotionally abusive, a man who forced him to learn sea diving when he didn't want to, forced him into dangerous situations solely because he expected Jay to follow in his footsteps. This caused such a divide in them that when Jay was 15, he left home and refused to talk to his father, even as he developed cancer and started legitimately dying. His father ended up taking his own life by drowning in the sea. Kind of poetic. And a year after his father's death, Jay decides to start diving in order to find his father's bones. It's kind of a wild idea, but he is absolutely certain that he can do this. Unfortunately, things go haywire and he gets swallowed by a whale, specifically a sperm whale. This book is butt clenching, okay? Because in the present, it's labeled with his PSI, like his air PSI. So you get a countdown of how much air he has left in his equipment. We get all of these flashbacks and incidences with his father that led to the decision of him leaving, that led to his decision to eventually come back to find his father's body. We delve into instances of emotional and physical abuse, all of these complicated relationships with a person who was a malevolent presence to you, but a positive presence to everyone else. We grapple with the idea of still being angry with your father for how he treated you when he was alive, but also grieving your father because he's no longer there. And even if he wanted to apologize, even if you wanted to reconcile, you can't because they're dead. And then we get this like horrifying, I want to say accurate, I mean, obviously it's science fiction, but pretty accurate description of what it would be like to be in the belly of a whale and try various escape plans and this countdown as you're losing oxygen, bathing in stomach acid for a whale. Like I said, it's butt clenching and it's so sad. And I think this is the first 5-star read, and I think so far the only 5-star read of the year, because even days after reading this, I was sitting trying to grapple with my own feelings about if I agreed with the ending, if I thought the way the relationship was treated was, something I agreed with, I guess. I don't know if I'm making any sense. But like, just trying to put myself in the shoes of this boy who was hurt by his father so much so that he left at 15 and refused to talk to his father, but then also trying to find some reconciliation with the memory of his father. It's great. It's a great story. I loved it. I highly recommend it. And also you get a lot of information about like scuba diving and sperm whales and the anatomy of that. So it's so sciency and fictiony that it really balances that out. And I will 100% look into more of Daniel Krause's books because this was amazing. This was truly amazing. Bunny by Mona Awad. I think that's how you say her name. Mona Awad. So I started this in December and it took me forever to finish this book. A part of it is just that December was really busy for me. A part of it is that ebook as a format, not my favorite. Bunny is about a woman in college. She's in her master's degree at a liberal arts school, specifically known for its writing program. And she is in the only female cohort of the school's history for their writing program. It's her and four other girls who have isolated her. They have become a clique, and when they tried to invite her into it, they either felt snubbed or she didn't get invited or whatever. But they don't like each other. So she has this very not like other girls mentality against these girls called the bunnies. They have names, she gives them nicknames, and then they're also called the bunnies. They call each other bunny. But eventually they try to invite her in again. And for whatever reason, she accepts this invite. And then her life goes fucking apeshit. The calling out of the not like other girl trope. There is a point in which I'll say the bunnies. It's not the bunny specifically, but you can tell it's the bunny's idea. Somebody monologues basically angrily at Elizabeth? Samantha. At Samantha and calls her out on how she thinks that she's so different, that she's not like these girls because she's smarter, because she's not cutesy, because she's not girly. She's so in love with her own loneliness and in her own isolation that she has given herself this superiority complex of being not like these other girls. But they also read Wuthering Heights. They also fought their way into this school. They also were chosen out of hundreds of maybe thousands of applicants to go to this school. Now, it's nuanced because these girls do have money. So obviously, they didn't have to fight for a scholarship. But, there's this idea that like Samantha gets called out on her superiority complex of this not like other girls idea. And I think that's officially what the book is trying to say, that your superiority complex for not being girly, for not fitting in, for falling in love with your own isolation is not special. I don't necessarily think I was picking up what the book was trying to put down. I guess I'll just say it. The girls end up making book boyfriends out of bunnies. There's this like paranormal magical aspect of it. And I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know why it's specifically boyfriends. I don't know why it's people that they're trying to fuck. I don't know if there's some sort of like inherent sexuality that I was missing out on. I don't know. I don't know why there was a lot of drug use when there's also magic. So it doesn't feel like there should have been drug use because you could have just been magical. I don't know. Went over my head, made it a bit more confusing for me. I will say I've talked previously about how I hate a specific trope that is in this book, but I will give it leniency because the whole point is the trope. It didn't just come out of left field. But it's a spoiler, so I don't want to talk about it. Okay. I wasn't going to read the second book because I didn't super enjoy the first book, but the second book seems to be more of a prequel where it talks about the bunnies and how they got to where they were. So I am slightly intrigued by that. It's not, the next book I'll read, but it's in the back of my head as maybe I'll pick it up. The next book I read was Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. I never got to talk about One Dark Window and why it pissed me off because I read it in December. I will start this review section saying if you liked One Dark Window, you will love Six Crimson Cranes. But because I did not like One Dark Window, I only enjoyed Six Crimson Cranes a little bit. Six Crimson Cranes is a blend of East Asian folklore and Western fairy tale folklore, specifically the Cinderella story. And I did not realize how Cinderella it was going to get. At some point, he's got her slipper. But anyway, it's a beautiful blend of these two different cultural storytelling devices or folklore into one very enjoyable story. Our main character, Shiori, is magical, but magic is banned, so she has to hide this. And at one point, her magic is discovered. She has this evil stepmother. She discovers her stepmother is also magic, and so her stepmother curses her and her brothers. She turns her brothers into cranes. So every day they transform into cranes, every night they transform into men. And then Shiori is specifically unable to talk. I kept forgetting this. She has a bull on her head the entire time. She mentions it a lot. I couldn't imagine her with a bull on her head, and then every time they'd be like, and then her bull was on her head or whatever. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. Oops. And it's mentioned a lot, so it's not a flaw of the book. It's legitimately me not remembering she had a bowl in her head. But because she has this bowl in her head, nobody can recognize her, and she's not allowed to tell anybody who she is. So even if she tries to write it out, even if she tries to explain who she is, she cannot. And she's also specifically not allowed to utter a word, because if she utters a word, her brothers will die. It's one brother for each word she utters. The rest of the story is her trying to break this curse between her and her brothers. And also, she's got this like love story with Takan, who is the prince she was betrothed to marry, but she didn't want to marry him. So she's like trying to break it off. But then she meets him and realizes that he's really great. Takan, I could take or leave. I didn't find him particularly interesting. I thought he was very bland. He's the princely type. His role in the story is to be the perfect guy. Great, not for me. I didn't find him entertaining. I didn't find him cool. I didn't find his perfectness endearing. I like my male characters to be a bit more messy. That's just me. I love a messy love story. Shiori and the brothers had much more characterization. I loved Shiori. I loved Kiki, the little sidekick, and specifically the audiobook narrator made Kiki sound exactly like an early 2000s sidekick slash animal character from an anime, like a dubbed anime. So that got some nostalgia points because it was just so funny. I loved the blending of these two folk tales. I love the way the author tells it. I love the path we go down specifically with the stepmother. I found that to be the best part of the book. And I enjoyed her relationship with her brothers, even though it was kind of hard to keep track of who was who. There's six of them, and they're not given that much page time. It was endearing to see her relationship with her brothers and to see her fight so hard to save their lives. There were a few parts where I was like, are we really doing this? Do we really have to? Was this necessary? Like, couldn't we have cut this? But other than that, really great read. Enjoyed it. Passed the time. Very endearing. Very YA love story. I was interested in the second book. Now, I read it in February, but I'm going to talk about it here because it was a DNF. Something I was interested in was the fact that there's a dragon character who's very obviously falling for Shiori, but she's super in love with Takan. So obviously I can't say too much about the second book because spoilers, but also I DNF'd it. We learned more about the Dragon Society, and it just didn't interest me. Anyway, I didn't like where they took the dragon's character. I didn't like what they were doing with it. And then she leaves it after like the, I don't know, 30% mark. I'm sure she goes back to it because it's literally called The Dragon's Promise, but it was not my favorite. And so I DNF'd it. It just wasn't for me. It's a soft DNF. There wasn't anything like horrendous or anything that made me put it down because I was so angry. It just wasn't for me. And I wasn't paying attention because I didn't really care. Lastly was Wings of Ebony by JL. And it's sitting over there, but this was the only book I read for my personal TBR. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I'm trying to focus on reading my personal TBR before I buy new books. And then also you know, I don't know. I was just gonna say this. I wasn't doing a great job because this is the only one in January that I read, and so far I haven't read any for February. But Wings of Ebony by J.L. The first thing I'm going to say about this book is that it is written in AAVE, African American Vernacular English. Not a bad thing, not a critique, not trying to like call it out, just saying, as a white person, it was a little bit jarring because I've never seen AAVE written out in a book. A lot of times when I do see it or when I see like people attempting it, it's a white author writing like a black person and trying to emulate AAVE, and it never works. So it was interesting to see it written out as like an actual dialect, like a black person writing the way black people talk, specifically in Houston in the East Row. Rue's mother was killed, and then immediately after her mother's death, she was whisked away to her father's homeland, which is a secret country that refuses to interact with people. And they call it the country of gods. Like these people are gods, but they're magical. They have magic and advanced technology. That's another thing to remember. They have magic and advanced technology. And the way they get their magic, they get these black onyx beads on bracelets that are like welded to their skin. I guess I'm going to say the elephant in the room. It's very Black Panther. It felt very reminiscent of Black Panther. And in fact, the second book even uses Black Panther as a comp title. I don't know if this one did. I didn't see anything about that, but it does have Black Panther as a comp title. So I don't think it's unfounded of me to say that this book feels very Black Panther because it's a secret country that's hidden away and refuses to talk with outside countries or to share its resources, and it has advanced technology that is almost magical, and the technology is given to these people through vibranium, which are they wear as black beads on their wrist. Specifically, it's mined only in that area. Anyway, I just didn't want people to be like, oh, it's a black fantasy, so you say it's Black Panther, but it really has nothing to do with it. It does. It is used as a comp title. It is very reminiscent of that, to the point where I actually had to keep reminding myself that there was magic in this book because the magic was so not talked about until Rue gets her magic thingies. There's a big spoiler. I don't want to say it, but until Rue gets to that point, which is very late in the book, the magic isn't really the forefront. It's the advanced technology. So that made it feel even more like Black Panther. I will say it is not a country of black people specifically. In this world building, there were four, yeah, four tribes, and then one guy, the history that they're told anyway, one guy united the tribes, and now they all kind of look like that one guy. Things that I really enjoyed about this book: I enjoyed Rue's relationship with everyone, really. I enjoyed her relationship with her sister. I enjoyed the complicated relationship she had with her father, of, being angry that he abandoned her and then finding out the truth and reconciling with him. I enjoyed her relationship with the people of the East Row, like her family, even though they're not biologically related, like that's her family. I enjoyed her relationship with Bree and their ups and downs. Not necessarily her relationship with Jamal, but we'll talk about that. I enjoyed the concepts that we're dealing with. So we're talking about systemic targeting of people of color, specifically Black people, both in this fake country. I forget what it's called. Our world and that hidden country have systemic racism issues. And I enjoyed how the author talked about the villain, because a lot of times in books about racism, usually the white author wants to make it one bad apple. The problems happen because there was one guy who, or maybe a couple guys, who hated black people, but once we get rid of him, we all live in a utopia and racism doesn't exist. We've solved it. We've solved racism. And that's not the truth. So this author takes strides to ensure that you understand that while it was one bad guy who was putting plans into motions, the reason he got away with it or was able to do as much damage was because of the systemic issues. Okay. So we're gonna try it without my, oh, it's weird not having something on my hand. Oops. Solely because the issues were already in that society. The systemic issues gave him the ability to do as much damage as he did. I brought Jamal up. Jamal is introduced, and then they have a romance, which I find very weird because I don't know, she doesn't know this guy. She's known him a total of like, I don't know, 3 days. And he helps out at the very end. At the very end, she's like, and I love you, or I'm gonna kiss you. I don't think they say I love you, but they start like a romance. And I don't know. I think any kind of romance that's tacked on is weird. And obviously, it just was added for, I don't know, a quota. Maybe not. Maybe not obviously it was added. But it, you know, it feels like it was added just because we need a romance. But also, Rue already had a guy set up that she was interested in. They had a romance, they broke up, then she has to work with him again. So, you know, maybe they're trying to set up this love triangle that's going on where Rue has to decide between Jamal and Julian? Or is it Julius? I think it's Julian. So maybe that's gonna happen in number 2, but if it's gonna happen in number 2, why did you do it here? You know, it just felt so tacked on at the very end, not earned. I don't know who this guy is. I don't know why he's kissing you. Please stop. That was my only issue with like the relationship. And then also how reminiscent it was of Black Panther. There's enough in it that's different that makes me go, okay, obviously it's not Black Panther. It is a duology. I guess this is the year of duologies. I've picked up so many specifically 2-book series. It is a duology. I am going to read the second book. I have it on my desk right now. And I'm very interested in what the new journey is going to be, what her next emotional journey will be, where she goes from here. Because we did see some growth of her accepting her fate, you know, accepting the challenge that is given to her, and also reconciling with people who have hurt her, like her father, you know, understanding what he went through and all of that. Also Bree as well. So I want to see where we're going with that, and also with the fallout of the last book. That's it. That's all I read in January. I know it is already like a week into February, so we will see what happens when I read in February, how long it takes me to edit and post this video, because God knows it takes me forever to do that. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. Thank you so much for listening to me yap about some books. Hopefully this little journal situation works out for me so I can write out my notes and remember my feelings. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Goodbye!